voters head to the polls in a congressional election that could hint at Democratic Party's future. It's election day for much of Los Angeles, as voters in the central and northeast part of the city head to the polls for a special election to help choose their next member of Congress. The race for the 34th Congressional District, a seat vacated by Xavier Becerra when he became California's Attorney General, has been a 4-month sprint that attracted a whopping 24 candidates. Half of them are women. More than a third are millennials. More than half are immigrants or the children of immigrants. And almost all of them have vowed to fight President Trump in this left-leaning progressive district, where only 9% of voters are registered as Republican. The first congressional primary since Trump's election has surfaced some of the biggest points of contention in the left's campaign of resistance: the Affordable Care Act, immigrants' rights, and the privatization of education. With 20 Democrats and a Green Party member competing for the progressive vote, many think the outcome could be an indication of where the fractured Democratic Party is headed next. The district, which stretches from downtown Los Angeles to Boyle Heights and incorporates Highland Park, Eagle Rock and Koreatown, is majority Latino and made up of several immigrant enclaves. Becerra, who held the seat for more than 2 decades, was regarded as a fierce advocate for immigrants and the poor. In a place where the median household income of residents lingers around $35,000, outside money has flooded into the race. More than 80% of campaign dollars going to the candidates came from outside the district, according to a Times analysis of Federal Election Commission filings. With no candidate likely to garner more than 50% of votes, the top 2 finishers of Tuesday's vote are expected to meet in a June 6 runoff. But the spectrum of candidates running in the primary is shifted. The debate decidedly left. Support for a single-payer healthcare system, shows of solidarity with so-called sanctuary cities, and speaking out against the Democratic Party establishment have been par for the course during the campaign. Many view the race for the 34th District as a proxy fight between the Bernie Sanders wing of the Democratic Party and establishment Democrats, many of whom have backed Assemblyman Jimmy Gomez. The 34th District was one of the few statewide that favored Vermont Senator Sanders over Hillary Clinton in last year's presidential primary. 3 main candidates are running on facets of the Sanders agenda: Arturo Carmona, Sanders' deputy political director during the presidential campaign; Wendy Carrion, a labor activist and former journalist who spent several weeks protesting the Dakota Access Pipeline at Standing Rock; and Kenneth Mejia, an accountant and Green Party candidate, who said he quit the Democratic Party over its corrupt politics. Sanders and Our Revolution, the political group he helped start, have declined to endorse a candidate, leaving the self-proclaimed Bernie-crats to fight for votes on the left. An 11th-hour controversy over allegations of sexism leveled at Carmona by former Sanders campaign staffers has further split the field. Gomez, who has touted his perfect scores from groups such as the League of Conservation Voters, Planned Parenthood and the California Labor Federation, has argued his track record and experience can help bring a progressive agenda to Washington. But at a time when ties to top party brass can be seen as toxic, it remains to be seen whether Gomez's dozens of endorsements from local, state and federal elected officials will prove an asset or a liability. If Jimmy Gomez is too conservative for this district, and that would have been laughable just 2 years ago, that should tell you where the body politic is going, Democratic strategist Eric Hakopian said in March. There are definitely things at work here that are emblematic of fights that will take place in the next 2, 4, 6 or 8 years in the Democratic Party. The race has also been influenced by a much more classic LA story: identity politics. Labor organizer Raymond Meza likes to point out he would be the first openly gay Latino elected to Congress if he wins. Robert Liachen, who would be the only Korean American in Congress and the first in more than 2 decades, has mobilized Korean American voters and donors in his quest to make the top 2. And in an era where women's marches and self-described nasty women are leading the protest movement, many of the 13 women running have often talked about how Trump inspired them to run and fight back. Tuesday's outcome hinges largely on who turns out to vote. With so many candidates and a potentially low turnout in a little-publicized special election, the 24 hopefuls are fighting for small groups of voters. More than 17,000 people, or about 6% of registered voters, had already voted by mail as of Monday evening. Some analysts have predicted turnout could be as low as 9%, while others think it might be as high as the recent LA city elections, went 21% of voters who cast ballots. In a more conventional race, most experts would guess that the lone Republican in the race, William Rodriguez Morrison, would get a large enough share of the vote against a splintered Democratic field to make it into the runoff, where he'd be almost certain to lose against any Democratic candidate. But few have been able to call this a conventional race.